There is a sentence near the beginning of Mrs. Dalloway that I want to read you. Just one sentence, and I want you to notice what it does to you. What a lark! What a plunge! For so it had always seemed to her when, with a little squeak of the hinges, which she could hear now, she had burst open the French windows and plunged at Burton into the open air. 2 exclamations. Then, before the thought ever lands, she is already back in the past. 30 years ago, she can hear the hinges. That one sensory detail, the squeak, and the whole present moment dissolves. That is the genius of Virginia Woolf. In a single sentence, she shows you what it is to be human, to be physically present on a street in London in 1923 while your whole inner being is somewhere completely else. Hello everyone, welcome to Hardika Reads. This is part 2 and we are going inside the text. Let's start at the very beginning, how the novel opens. Mrs. Dalloway said she would buy the flowers herself, for Lucy had her work cut out for her. 6 words into this novel and we already know so much. She would buy the flowers herself. There's a decision, an act of will, a small rebellion against delegating everything to servants. This is a woman who wants to be in the world, not above it. She wants to feel the morning, she wants to participate. But why flowers? Think about it. Flowers are beautiful, temporary, carefully arranged for display, and they die. Clarissa is going to a lot of trouble to create a perfect evening, and flowers are the symbol of that effort. Something gorgeous, arranged for others to enjoy, destined not to last. Then the prose immediately plunges, remember the word is hers, into memory. How fresh, how calm, stiller than this, of course, the air was in the early morning, like the flap of a wave, the kiss of a wave, chill and sharp, and yet, for a girl of 18, as she then was, solemn, feeling as she did, standing there at the open window, that something awful was about to happen. Notice the rhythm here, like the flap of a wave, the kiss of a wave. She revises herself mid-sentence. It's not just a wave, it's a kiss. The prose is thinking, changing its mind, getting closer to the truth as it goes. This is stream of consciousness in action, not a polished, finished thought, but thought in the act of forming. And there it is, that something awful was about to happen. She's 18, standing at a window, feeling the morning air, and she's filled with this premonition of dread. Woolf doesn't explain it, she doesn't need to. We all know that feeling, the certain mornings carry in them the weight of something and you can't name it. This opening sentence is one of the great opening sentences in all of literature because it does what the whole novel does in miniature. It places us in the present, immediately pulls us into the past, gives us sensory richness and hovers over the mystery of what it means to be alive and afraid. As Clarissa walks through Westminster to buy her flowers, she has one of the novel's great epiphanic passages. Let me read the key part. In people's eyes, in the swing, tramp and trudge, in the bellow and the uproar, the carriages, motor cars, omnibuses, vans, sandwich men shuffling and swinging, brass bands, barrel organs, in the triumph and the jingle and the strange high singing of some aeroplane overhead was what she loved. Life, London, this moment of June. This sentence doesn't just describe London, it enacts London. The rhythm accelerates. The list builds and builds. Carriages, motor cars, omnibuses, vans, sandwich men, like the city itself crowding in. And then it ends with that quiet, devastating triplet. Life, London, this moment of June. 3 syllables, life, London, this moment, as if the whole tumult of the city collapses into a single breathing instant. Woolf is doing something philosophically serious here. Clarissa's love of life is not abstract. It is intensely, specifically this street, this hour, this noise, these bodies. She loves existence in its particularity, not in some general heavenly sense. And then comes the line that illuminates the entire novel. For it was the middle of June, the war was over, except for someone like Mrs. Foxcroft at the embassy last night, eating her heart out because that nice boy was killed, and now the old manor house must go to a cousin. Or Lady Bexborough, who opened a bazaar, they said, with a telegram in her hand, John, her favourite, killed. But it was over, thank heaven, over. The war was over, and then immediately it isn't, because there is Mrs. Foxcroft still eating her heart out. Lady Bexborough standing at a bazaar with a telegram in her hand saying her son was killed, still opening the bazaar, because what else do you do? The war was over, but the grief never gets a telegram saying you can stop now. Woolf embeds this trauma right inside the joy of a June morning. She doesn't separate them. The beauty and the grief exist in the same breath, and that is the emotional truth of post-war England. Here is one of the most extraordinary passages in the novel. Clarissa, standing at the gates of the park, has this thought. She would not say of anyone in the world now that they were this or that. She felt very young, at the same time unspeakably aged. She sliced like a knife through everything, at the same time was outside looking on. She had a perpetual sense as she watched the taxicabs of being out, far out to sea and alone. She always had the feeling that it was very, very dangerous to live even one day. Let's unpack this. She would not say of anyone in the world now that they were this or that. This is Clarissa's most fundamental conviction about human identity, that people cannot be reduced to labels or categories. She resists the Victorian habit of classification. Identity is not a fixed thing, it shifts, it flows, it is perceived differently by every person who looks at you. Then, she felt very young at the same time unspeakably aged. Both at once. This is what Woolf understands about middle age. Not that you become old, but that you contain all the ages you have ever been simultaneously. The 18-year-old at the window is still inside the 52-year-old buying flowers. And then, she always had the feeling that it was very, very dangerous to live even one day. Read that twice. Not dangerous to do something reckless. Dangerous simply to live, to be present, to love things. Because loving anything means you can lose it. And every day is a negotiation with loss. This is Clarissa Dalloway in her soul. Under the parties, under the silk dress and the careful hospitality, there's a woman who is terrified by the sheer precariousness of being alive. And who throws parties precisely as a way of saying, we are still here, come in, let me hold this together for one more night. Now there's a beautiful passage where Peter Walsh remembers a conversation with Clarissa on a bus long ago. She had a theory about the self. She said, sitting on the bus, going up Shaftesbury Avenue, she felt herself everywhere, not here, here, here. And she tapped the back of the seat, but everywhere. She waved her hand going up Shaftesbury Avenue. She was all that. Clarissa's theory, the self is not confined to the body. It extends outward, spreading into the people you love, the places you inhabit, the strangers you pass on the street. You're not just this particular body in the seat. You're also the woman at the market stall, the man sleeping in the park, the light on the Thames. This is not mysticism for its own sake. It is Woolf's philosophical answer to the terror of death. If the self is everywhere, if it bleeds outward into other lives and places, then death cannot entirely extinguish it. Later in the novel, Clarissa thinks, Did it matter then, she asked herself, walking towards Bond Street, did it matter that she must inevitably cease completely? All this must go on without her. Did she resent it, or did it not become consoling to believe that death ended absolutely? But that somehow in the streets of London, on the ebb and flow of things, here, there, she survived. Peter survived, lived in each other, she being part, she was positive at the trees at home. This is Woolf's answer to mortality. Not the afterlife, not religion, but continuity through connection. The people we love carry us forward. We live in them. The trees we touched remember us somehow. It sounds fragile, but it is everything Clarissa has. And by the end of the novel, we will understand why she needs it. Now let's turn to Septimus Warren Smith, because his world is the shadow world that gives Clarissa's light its meaning. When we first meet Septimus in Regent's Park, he's sitting with his wife Razia and he's talking to a dead man. His fellow soldier Evans, killed in the war. For Septimus, Evans is not gone. Evans is here, behind the railings, among the leaves. Woolf gives us Septimus's inner experience with the same lyrical technique she uses for Clarissa. But the stream of consciousness for Septimus is different. It keeps fracturing, going wrong, tipping over into terror. Here is how Woolf describes his state of mind. He lay back in his chair, exhausted but upheld. He lay resting, waiting before he again interpreted, with effort, with agony, to mankind. He lay very high on the back of the world. The earth thrilled beneath him, red flowers grew through his flesh, the stiff leaves rustled by his head. Red flowers grew through his flesh. This is what it is to be inside a psychotic episode, and Woolf renders it with extraordinary compassion. She does not pathologize him from the outside. She takes us inside, and from inside it has its own terrible logic and beauty. Septimus feels he's receiving cosmic truths. He feels he's at the top of the world. The flowers going through his flesh do not feel like symptoms. They feel like revelation. But here is the crucial thing Woolf is doing. Septimus's visions are not simply illness. They are also truth. He sees what everyone else refuses to look at directly. The horror of the war, the arbitrary cruelty of death, the meaninglessness of the social order that sent young men into trenches and then demanded they come home and be normal. When Septimus says no crime, love, he repeated, fumbling for his card and pencil. He's not raving, he's trying clumsily, desperately, through a shattered mind to communicate what the war taught him. That violence is the lie and love is the truth. He has been given the truths no one else can bear to say out aloud, and his mind has broken under the weight of carrying them. Now we must not overlook Lucrezia or Razia, Septimus's Italian wife, because through her Woolf shows us another kind of suffering, the invisible agony of the caregiver. Let me read you these lines. She was like a bird sheltering under the thin hollow of a leaf, who blinks at the sun when the leaf moves, starts at the crack of a dry twig. She was exposed. She was surrounded by the enormous trees, vast clouds of an indifferent world, exposed, tortured, and why should she suffer? Why? Razia is not mad. She is simply a young woman who fell in love, got married, moved to a foreign country, and is now watching her husband disappear into a world she cannot enter. She keeps asking, why should I suffer? And the answer the novel gives is devastating in its silence. There is no reason. The war did not choose Septimus. It destroyed him randomly as it destroyed millions of others, and the people who loved them were collateral damage. Moving on, one of the novel's great arguments is about power, specifically the power of social institutions to crush the individual soul. And Woolf gives this argument flesh in two doctors, the jovial Dr. Holmes and the terrifying Sir William Bradshaw. Dr. Holmes tells Septimus and Razia that there is nothing wrong with him. He just needs to take an interest in things. Go for walks, play cricket. This cheerful dismissal is its own form of violence. But it is Sir William Bradshaw who represents something truly sinister. Woolf writes, worshipping proportion, Sir William not only prospered himself but made England prosper, secluded her lunatics, forbade childbirth, penalized despair, made it impossible for the unfit to propagate their views until they too shared his sense of proportion. Look at these two words, penalized despair. The whole horror of a certain kind of psychiatric power is in these two words. Sir William does not help the suffering, he penalizes it. He confines, suppresses, medicalizes because disorder is inconvenient, because grief is ugly, because the society rebuilding after a war cannot afford to look too closely at what the war actually did to people. He is not evil in a cartoonish way. He's charming at dinner parties. He's distinguished. He's powerful. He simply believes completely and without question that people who cannot conform to his idea of proportion must be removed from view. And what does Clarissa think of him when she encounters him at her party? One wouldn't like Sir William to see one unhappy. No, not that man. That is everything. That is the whole critique. A doctor whose patients cannot bear the thought of him seeing them in pain is not a healer. He's a warden. Now we reach the emotional heart of the novel. The party is in full swing. Sir William Bradshaw and his wife arrive late, and Lady Bradshaw mentions quietly that a young man killed himself. A veteran, he threw himself from a window. Clarissa retreats to a small empty room, and here is what happens inside her. Always her body went through it. When she was told first, suddenly, of an accident, her dress flamed, her body burnt. He had thrown himself from a window. Up had flashed the ground, through him, blundering, bruising, went the rusty spikes. There he lay with a thud, thud, thud in his brain, and then a suffocation of blackness. So she saw it. Clarissa has never met Septimus. She does not know his name, but she feels his death in her own body. Her dress flames, her body burns. She experiences his fall physically, viscerally. Thud, thud, thud. Why? Because Clarissa, for all her parties and flowers and careful social surface, is the same person as Septimus. She too has felt the danger of being alive. She too has stood at the edge. She chose to stay, chose the party, chose the roses, chose the surface. He chose something else. And then comes the line that is the key to the entire novel. Death was defiance. Death was an attempt to communicate, people feeling the impossibility of reaching the center, which mystically evaded them. Closeness drew apart, rapture faded, one was alone. There was an embrace in death. Read that again. Death was an attempt to communicate. There was an embrace in death. Septimus couldn't make anyone understand what he had seen, what he had felt, what the war had done to him. The doctors dismissed him. Society had no place for his grief. His death was the final message, the only message no one could ignore. It was the one truth that could not be managed or proportioned away. And then, these lines. Somehow it was her disaster, her disgrace. It was her punishment to see sink and disappear, here a man, there a woman, in this profound darkness, and she forced to stand here in her evening dress. Somehow it was her disaster. The stranger's death is her disaster because she recognizes him, because she knows she could have been him, because every life she has managed to feel, every morning walk, every party, every rose was purchased at the price of going on when going on is almost impossible. She looks out the window and sees an old woman in the house opposite, quietly going to bed alone, and she thinks of the line from And she feels suddenly that she is glad. Glad he did it, glad he held on to something, hurled himself at something rather than dwindling away in one of Sir William's rest homes. Look at these lines. She felt somehow very like him, the young man who had killed himself. She felt glad that he had done it, thrown it away while they went on living. This is one of the most challenging, most honest moments in all of literature. Not that Woolf endorses suicide, but that she refuses to sentimentalize survival. Septimus's death is not simply a tragedy. It is also, in its own terrible way, an act of defiance, of integrity. He refused to pretend. He refused to perform wellness he didn't feel. And something in Clarissa, something deep and private and real, recognizes and respects that. We have now walked through the architecture of Mrs. Dalloway. Its language, its imagery, its ideas. In part 3, we are going to bring it all together. We look at the major themes: sanity in society, the body and the soul, time and memory, what it means to give a party. And we will think about why this novel, written in 1925, still speaks to us with such astonishing force. So I'll see you in part 3. Bye-bye.